but trying to start with something that's tiny, that's like a major area of detail. It's where our eyes go first, but it's not but it's not like actually what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to start the most broad way possible. The thing that we're kind of seeing last. So we kind of want to do the inverse of whatever our eye is doing. Whatever is capturing the eye first, that's the thing we're going to end up drawing last. And the thing that we notice last, that's the thing that we're going to be drawing first. So we want to draw the biggest possible shapes, the ones that are just kind of like forming the image as we see it if we were to see it from very, very far away. I'm going to start there. And so that means, in this case, banging out the whole head shape. You got this easier when they're at the same size. There we go. And the collar. And this is the sort of thing that just about anybody can do. I recommend for this to use a pen tablet. I'm using a Wacom pen tablet, but there's also the Huion and XP pen. They're both very affordable options, cost between $40 and $50 to get in the door with one of those things. Highly recommend it if you don't already own one. It's not a very common thing for people to have, but it's one of the favorite computer devices that I've ever purchased, is pen tablet. I mean, obviously I use it all the time because I'm a professional artist, but even before I was a professional artist, back when I was a student, back when I was just first getting started in Photoshop, it was still like my prized possession. It was like living with my parents at the time, and, you know, I spent my own money on it, and I remember getting very angry when anybody messed with my pen tablet because it was like my most precious thing. And it still is one of my most precious things. I tend to even bring one with me when I'm traveling, just in case something happens where I'm going to need to do digital art out on the road. It's easy to like throw one in a laptop bag. They're very sturdy, very easy to travel with. If you were trying to do this at home, and you can follow along at home as well, the reference image I'm using, I can actually upload it in the VC chat in case anybody wants to give this a try. VC text. Just throw that in there. I upload a reference image for study every single day. Well, every weekday, generally. Sometimes I screw it up. Over at the Huckleberry Discord server. You can find it by going to huckleberry.art. And I've got a channel on there where I upload a couple of reference images just about every day so that people can study along and do daily studies the same way I've been doing them. This is going to be study 83, I think. 83 of these. I've gotten a lot better after doing 83 of them. And it hasn't taken me that much time. You know, I was going to be about 90 days older one way or the other. But now I'm also 90 days better at art, which has been a lot of fun. So when I'm looking at this guy, obviously he's got this long neck, chilled jaw, all these things we're noticing. Sure. But the other thing I'm noticing is the internal structure of the face. You know, we can look at this sort of like an egg that's got a kind of division down the middle, sort of subdivision down the middle. We can look at him sort of like a box, where the face is the front plane of a box, and the head goes around the rest. I tend to be a little bit more specific with it. There's this sort of frame around the face that everybody has to one degree or another, but people with very defined features like this, they have even more defined sort of facial frame here. And within that, we can start to break down even smaller shapes. And so I'm looking at this not as a piece of a bunch of potential wiggly lines. I'm not just tracing where the contrast is. The big thing that I'm doing that is not obvious is I'm looking at the 3D shapes of this. I'm seeing this not as a 2D image, but as a representation of a 3D guy. And that 3D guy I'm holding in my head as best as I can, trying to see it as 3D. And in that 3D space, I'm taking that 3D object that I'm holding in 3D space, and then I'm trying to then reproject it back down onto the page as best as possible. Considering the ways that like things overlap, how they like project forwards from the plane of the screen. And by holding that 3D object in my mind, I'm able to get a clearer representation of this than what I could do if I were looking at this purely as a 2D object. One of the ways that artists practice this is through live drawing. They hire a model, and they have a model stand up on stage and they draw them live. And this kind of live life drawing is especially useful because unlike a photo where you can kind of grid the whole thing out and just treat it as a pattern of 2D, you can just look at this as a series of like an arrangement of pixels or an arrangement of wiggly lines on a 2D plane. But when you're looking at somebody in person, there's always going to be a little bit of imperfection on your point of view. You'll be moving your head around. Their pose will drift. There will be minor changes in your perspective in the scene, and the way that like things line up will be shifting throughout the course of a pose, especially over the course of like around 30 minutes, which is what you do for like a longer form pose. We're going to be doing this for 2 hours. Over the course of a 2-hour pose, if this guy was actually posing for me, I wouldn't be able to rely on the fact that like there's an equal distance from the corner of the mouth to this fold on the side and to the jaw. As his head slightly rotates one way or the other, those things are going to change in proportion to each other. Everything, the actual image itself is going to shift subtly. The lighting could shift. And so the only way to be able to continue to hold it in some static form would be to consider it as a three-dimensional object and how that relates to the way it appears as an image on the page. So photo study can be very useful, but life drawing is way, way better as a learning tool, and because it's way harder. You can cheat a certain amount here by just treating this as a projection, as a 2D projection, and copy it over from the reference over to the main image, and just treat it as a piece of like 2D information. But to actually get the most out of it, you have to think about it in 3D, and life drawing forces you to do that. Which is one of the reasons that I don't make time for it, because it's very hard. Sometimes I just like art to be easy. Rather than draw all the little flips and floops coming off of his hair, I am going to try to keep it a little bit more general at first, and then I'm going to solidify it all down in a bit. Keep these about proportional to each other. Helps me get clear up my perspective on reading the reference. He's got a bigger head. I found one of the biggest things for me as I'm working on this, that I've gotten improved at as I've done more of it, is that when I look over at the reference and I look back at my image, and if there's something wrong, something that is off, I've just gotten more comfortable with making a correction. There's something uncomfortable about noticing that things are wrong and then fixing them. It's easier to just maintain the same perspective. and say, I think I got it right, and then never ask again whether or not it's right. If I can notice that it's wrong and take the steps to correct it, I'm going to be in good shape. And so the more I can double check against different reference points within the image, check to make sure that it's relatively similar, the better off this whole operation is going to go, especially early on. I'm trying to get this structure assembled. The more corrections I could make, the more those the good choices are going to reverberate through to the end of the piece, and it's going to make the whole process a lot easier. So it's not really just a matter of building up the skills to be able to see it or to be able to push my hand around in like a precise way. There's also the feeling of sort of mastering the discomfort with trying to recognize when something is wrong and changing it. See, instead of starting with the eyes now, as I've like worked my way through all the other aspects of the image, gotten slowly down, further into smaller and smaller shapes, and now we're finally getting them. And we're being kind of imprecise about it because everything at this step I tend to leave pretty imprecise. I don't need to get locked into really difficult choices, and I don't need to be overly concerned with the minutia of this thing yet. I'm going to get to it. The small things are going to happen once I get down to the small things. Right now, I'm just worried about the big stuff. Okay, getting close here. Being able to start to zoom in and take to the next level. There's definitely some things that are off, though. And I'm going to see what I can get corrected before I move on. I feel like I've rotated his face up and to the right some. I'm actually going to take the whole face. All these construction lines. Control T to transform them a little bit. I can even warp it a little bit to try to like move, yeah. Give a sense of a rotation. I have my lasso tool pinned to the hotkey on my tablet pen. So I don't even need to touch my keyboard to be able to make these kinds of little selections. This should slim down the profile of the face a little bit as well. This very pronounced chin, I think it might be worth it to block that in so we have that as a reference point along with everything else. Likeness is always a struggle, especially for me. I've met some artists online recently that are exceptionally good at it. They seem to just have a sixth sense for those sort of things. Something they must have developed over years and years and years worth of practice. So I've only started doing studies a few months back, so it's still a bit of a weak point for me, but I'm not too dissatisfied with my abilities on it yet. I've been getting better and better the more I do these. So who knows? Maybe in a few years I'll be excellent at likeness, and I'll just add that to the repertoire. Getting good at art is not getting good at one thing. It's getting good at 100 little things, all of which kind of compound on each other. A study like this builds up a certain subset of those tools. And then other work like doing imaginative drawing, which I'm going to be getting into a little bit more on stream, on my Twitch stream tomorrow. They build up different skills. And the difference that you see in a lot of artists' work, between a lot of artists' work, comes from the fact that they have really focused on different sets of skills based off of their interest and their different preferences. Personally, I'm best known for my imaginative work, sort of surrealist character designs, but all that's built on being able to abstract a realistic figure. So this might not look like my core work, but it's still building a skill set that's going to be able to build on top of my core work. And it's fun to learn it. So I'm perfectly happy to spend some time with it, even a lot of time with it. So it means that like I'm going to get to have a good excuse to spend a bunch of time making some art, and I'm going to get better at my job, which is also happens to be my hobby. You know, it's a fortunate thing that I get to do both kind of at the same time. And I get to share this with you, which is like, you know, it's one more reason to be enjoying this, is that I get to like share this with other people and they can follow along and appreciate the process as well. Art is an activity that is like, I think especially good when it's being done as part of a community. Okay. So it's not a particularly good likeness yet, but we're kind of getting there. It's definitely got a vibe going. You can see it in the navigator here. I'm going to slim down some of his hair, though. He's got the kind of Steve Harrington hair happening. Stranger Things. Okay. So I'm making a new layer just so that as I make changes here, I can sort of flip them on and off and decide what I want to keep and what I want to throw out. What I want to do next is to make some corrections and build up my values a little bit. Values are the lights and darks of the image. Having the values very clear is going to give the whole thing a much more three-dimensional appearance, and it's going to give me more of a handle on where I'm going right and where I'm going wrong with this thing. It's going to give me a clearer perspective on it overall. Certainly the skin tone is not going to be all close to white, so I can just sort of lay in some nice dark wash over the whole thing. Bring the shirt darker, how it is in the reference. It looks like a kind of tweed jacket. It's very textured. I'm not going to get too into the detail on it. Any of the parts that are going to have lots of little hair flyaways, I'm just going to soften those up right away. I can get into the detail more later but a certain amount of vagueness ends up being an assistant at this point. Get a little bit closer to the overall relative values that are going on here. Add a little bit of shading on the side of the face and the side of the neck. Big brush, large strokes, very imprecise. The whole thing is designed to be like very loose. I'm trying to focus on the big stuff first. But I am going to bring my brush down a little bit and make it just a little smaller and a little bit more precise. You can see on the top plane of the cheek here, the highlight is running along the cheekbone, and then up on the top here, we actually have a bit of a shadow. It's a little darker running underneath the eye here. So one might assume that this plane, because it faces upwards, tends to capture a lot of light from overhead lights and the sun and stuff, and so it's easy to just sort of throw a highlight up here, but we're going to be paying attention to the reference rather than our expectations. And so got a little bit of a shadow here. He's got some definition over his sinus bone. This I don't know, I'm going to say sinoid. I don't know what all the anatomy is. Never really studied anatomy in an academic way. That lump on the forehead that guys have. Combination of a bony protrusion with also some like soft material up in there. Getting a little closer on those sort of relative values here. It's all kind of softening up a bit, and it's beginning to coalesce into a clear image across the board. One of the other things I like to do at this stage is to actually take a soft brush and sort of look at where the larger transitions are. You can see by looking at this in a blurry way that the front plane of the face here is getting a lot more light while the rear part is more in shadow. I'm going to do this on a separate layer, so flip it on or off. See over here where the light is, maybe it's an open window or something, it's a pretty soft light. You can see that it's not that there's like a hard line that delineates the lit side from the shadow side. We definitely know when we're looking here that this side of his face is dark, but it's not that there's like a spot where it starts to become all dark. There is some suggestions of Terminators where the shadows kind of end, but they kind of also fade darker. The shadowed areas fade darker as they go to the right, and they fade a little lighter as they go to the left. And then the highlights are most intense sort of through the center of the face here. And as we move across the face, the parts that are catching the most light, like the top of the cheek here, also become a little darker. So in order to illustrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay in a little bit of that lightness over here, a little darkness here, and that's going to give me a little bit of additional volume kind of for free, just using a soft brush. And I might just overdo it a little bit. Typically, overdoing this stage for me has been yielding some like better results on the next steps. So I actually overwrite a little bit of my work by building in a little bit of the extra softness at this stage, finding where those highlights are, finding where the bigger, softer shapes are, and sort of defining those with a soft brush, like an airbrush. And if I'm overdoing it too much, I can always dial it back because I keep it on a separate layer. If I was taking these previous steps a little bit more precisely, I'd have a little bit more of a portrait here, but you know what? I don't really feel like doing that. What I want to do is start to bring in those more precise details here in just a minute. First things first, I'm going to add a nice golden background to this guy. He's already got a yellow background. I sometimes really like doing these nice golden colored backgrounds. Overdo the color a little bit. Give it a little artistic flair. I'm just going to paint this in on top over the work that I've already done. Something about looking at the shape of the outline itself rather than the figure on the interior. It gives me an extra bit of perspective. It's a different way of looking at the figure, and the difference that I see in it, like, averages out. So, like, I have this like sense of where the character is, and then I look at where the background's supposed to be, and neither view of it in my eye is that precise. But between the two of them, they get a little bit closer to the ground truth. It's a very rough way to add a background in, but the roughness of it also gives me a little bit of an excuse to kind of fudge things. So that once I get down to the precise point, I'm taking like a blurry line and then I'm sharpening it into a crisper line. And now I'm going to start actually sharpening in some of these values and some of these details. So I'm going to get in a little closer. And I'm going to start looking for areas where my image deviates from the reference. And I'm going to get my, I'm going to be changing the values of my brush by selecting them off the canvas. I just need to look for a place on the canvas where there's already a color that's about right. So I've got like values ranging from the very dark to relatively light. And then if I need to lighten it up, I can always add a little bit of white over the top of it. Glaze in a little light to like bring it up just a bit if I need to. But I'm not sure I really need to that much. Got a very dim lighting on his face. Adds a nice, moody, artistic feel to it, I think. So now some of the construction lines are getting wiped out and overwritten. I'm noticing where some of these features, like the eyebrows, need to get relocated a bit. I'm able to define the boundaries of some of these features a little bit as well. You can see I'm looking at this highlight going across the front of the sinus here. It kind of wraps around down here, and it tends to go underneath the, for most people, you can see the same shape. The bone that goes over the eye, the orbital bone, tends to cross the eyebrow. So you think of the eyebrow as being like where the eye socket is. It's like sort of the top ridge of the eye socket. But I like to think about this this shape that kind of goes and crosses it right here. See that there tends to be like a connection between the shading on there. Relevant. The underside of the nose, tip of the nose has this little plane on the front of it. Little tip shape tends to flatten out a little bit on the underside. So the actual tip of the nose is not down here between the nostrils, but up a little bit, leaving this like kind of front shape. We're not going to be outlining it, but we are going to be seeing a little transition in value around that point. And then across the corner of it tends to be a highlight. Because no matter what angle the light's at, there's going to be somewhere where there's going to be a decent transition somewhere around the tip of the nose, because the tip faces has a plane that kind of faces in every direction. So somewhere along the edge here, there's usually a highlight. think we need to bring the tip of his nose down a little bit. So it's a little crunched in there. Use the rubber stamp tool here. Allows me to select a point and then pick a new place where I want that piece to draw in. Nice handy tool for being able to relocate features once you want to make like minor corrections and stuff. Okay. Keeping things very general here. Trying not to get overly precise. If I get too precise at this stage, things are going to go rough for me. I'm going to get too tensed up, and I'm going to start making choices to try to defend what's already there instead of being open to the ways in which my piece needs to improve over the course of it. A lot of what's happening is, some of it is a matter of like the challenge of perceiving it all right, like seeing what's really there. And the other part of it is an emotional challenge of like accepting what needs to be different. There we go. Maybe there's a little bit of bounce light coming up through here on the underside of the eye and across the cheek. Sometimes I'm drawing in the highlight, sometimes I'm drawing in the shadow. Depends on where I think it's furthest from the current state of the painting. You know, if things are looking too dark, I need to add light, and if they're too light, I need to add some dark. Pretty simple idea. But when you're watching somebody else do it, it looks a little counterintuitive because, you know, one moment things are getting lighter, another moment they're getting darker. Things are just kind of pushing around. It's not clear whether or not it's all adding up. And then it's either coming into focus or it's not. And it's like, you don't really get a glimpse. You get a glimpse into the artist's hand, but you never get a glimpse into their mind. This part of the process where things start getting rendered always feels to me a little bit less like working in 2D and a lot more like working in 3D. It really feels like pushing clay around. It's a matter of sculpting more than it is drawing. When I found that when people are watching this, there's always something that they're seeing, that they're looking at, it's catching their eye, that's driving them crazy that I've gotten wrong. I seem to keep skipping around. Like, for me, I'm seeing things are kind of flitting in and out of my perception as I'm working around the canvas. I'm noticing minor changes, like differences in the shadows. I'm like noticing ways in which the face is sculpted incorrectly or bits of the whole painting that I've completely ignored, lost track of. And they'll pop in and I try to address them and I look around and I find more stuff and there's like this buffet of corrections that need to get made. So I'm picking and grabbing all the stuff that's standing out to me, but somebody else, they're gonna see something totally different. So there's a decent chance that watching somebody do this is driving you crazy. You're gonna wonder why are you not noticing that? Why is that in the wrong spot? I'm gonna say because I didn't see it, even though it was right in front of my face. But I'll probably get it. I've gotten decently good at these things, and so I'll probably notice the thing that you're noticing soon. Before it's over, probably get it. Got a little bit of time to put it all together, figure this thing out. Move the eye up just a little bit there. I'm going to change the shape to generalize. There's a more generalized eye shape that's like at this 2 corners here, another corner here. That is a little bit more accurate than like putting a single corner at the top, having it like a tent shape. Having it a little bit more like a, what would you call that? Pentagon. A little bit like a kind of pentagon with a folded bottom, I think is a little bit more accurate. If I want to scale his eye up a little bit, I think I might. I can grab it, hit Control C, Shift Control C, Shift Control V, and do a copy merge. And I will get like this little patch here. I can then scale at will. And then merge it back down. With traditional paints, I'd have to repaint it. And it might be easier to wipe out the whole thing and then rebuild it. But as a digital artist, get to transform things in a way that is very freeform. It's one of the things I really like about digital art. It's very, very flexible. Bit by bit, I think he's coming into focus here. Where did this come from? I've also exaggerated his face a little bit as well. It's fun to add a little bit of exaggeration. I also need to make sure that those exaggerations are adding up to something that feels right. There'll be corrections being made along the whole length of this process. Make sure that it's like all adding up the right way. Well, not make sure, but I'll give it my best shot. I don't want to get too precise with it yet. Getting too precise with it is going to lock me in and make me feel like I can't make the next corrections I'm going to need when it comes to the color. So before I add the color, I want to make sure that things have stayed a little loose, because the color tends to behave best when it's given a little bit of looseness, like a little bit of wiggle room, so that as I make those final corrections on the values, that the color kind of gets smushed around and smeared into all the corners and things. Change his mouth shape a little bit here. I don't know if it's bothering any of you, but I want to get as close as I can, close as I can see. Pushing that line of like getting it as best as I can every single time, and then starting over and trying again the next day. That daily repetition, that adds up fast. Gotten tremendously better at these over the course of the last 83 repetitions. Still got years of headway, though. Years of potentially getting better at this. It's a really complex task and it requires a lot of practice, which is the best part about it, because it's fun to do. The idea that you can always be improving over the course of a decade, to me, is pretty exciting. It's not really some sort of penultimate version of this that I think is going to like, propel me into some future version of myself that is like perfect at painting. There's no making it. It's just a matter of like constantly pushing and like trying and seeing what happens and seeing what works. Maybe raise his forehead up a little bit here. Yeah, I like that. All right. Before I get too precise about this, let's add a little bit of color to this dude. Gradient map is the first tool I usually reach for when I'm going to colorize something. Get this crazy version of it. Pick a gradient, any gradient, and it's going to kind of map those colors from the gradient over the top based off the values, where the darkest colors end up here, and then slowly transition through all of the different colors in the rainbow, whatever is here, and then finally end up all the way on the right. And some of these, they look pretty nutty, but when you use them with a blending mode, they can produce some really striking results that are good for creating a simple color base. If we look at the colors here, as we go into some of these shadow areas, you can see that like it goes from more of a pale orange to like a redder color as in the cheeks and around the eyes. Anywhere where a shadow starts to terminate, it actually gets a little bit more bright and red as we get these like, start to see the scattering of the light, the edge of the shadow. This gradient map technique creates a little bit of that automatically. And it also allows us to have a little bit of base tone that we can use to establish the sort of temperature of the piece overall. The other thing it does is it allows us to have different colors for the highlights and shadows. One of the reasons we don't just apply a color layer directly to add skin tone is that the hue in the shadows is actually different than the hue in the highlights. It's a different color where there's less light than in the areas where there's more light. And that tends to manifest as a difference in color temperature. So you either end up with a warm highlight and a cool shadow, or a cool shadow and a warm highlight. Did I say the same thing twice? Anyways, one's cool, one's warm. And this process can get you there kind of quickly. See, this one I'm not so fond of because it's like all warm through both the shadows and highlights on the face here. Something like this gets us a little bit more of that. Something like this is doing some work here because it's giving us some more warmth and, a separation between the warm and the cool in a way that is like pretty appealing. And it's not realistic, but the point of it is not to be realistic. It's supposed to be a part of a larger picture. You can even take one of these gradients and start pushing these handles around to see if maybe we get a little bit more of what we want. Ooh, wow. Get a really hard transition there. Take one of these, pick them, swap it out for something else. And the reason I like gradient maps is because it allows me to kind of like twist these knobs that like chop and screw the piece in a way that's like remixing the colors a little bit in a procedural way, in a more mechanical way. So I'm playing more color DJ than, color trombonist here. Instead of like precisely choosing where everything is and where it's going to go the way that a traditional painter would. Instead, I'm using digital tools to be able to like play around with potential spaces and sort of move through here and get a sense of like multiple different possible solutions. This is actually one of my favorite ones. I'm going to give this a try for today. And then I'm going to do a little color glaze over the top using the hard light blending mode, which is a typical thing that I use. Pick a color that is more or less where the skin tone is going to be and lay it in light over the top. I have the blending, I have the opacity down to about 30%, so it's only blending through about 30% of the color. And it's mixing with the hard light, it's mixing with the values. All together, it is creating this kind of like color concoction that is the byproduct of all the things that are underneath it. All the preparatory work that we've done up to this point is mixing with the colors that I'm glazing over the top of it to create a more dynamic result than if I were to simply just be using the normal layer. And because it's a digital art, I can pull out the wheels of steel here and start to say I want them to be more yellow or more desaturated or more, I want to go like weird and make him all gold. Can make him a little darker, a little more pale. Where do we start with this? I'm going to tilt it just a little bit up. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit more of a yellow here, and then I'm going to mix in a little more orange around some of these key areas. And if there's anybody who's got any questions about the process that I'm using, or wants to ask me about being an artist, or has any conversational topics that they want to get my input on, just wants to chit chat, feel free to raise your hand. You can come up on stage and you can ask me questions. We can chit chat while I'm adding some color here and fussing with this thing. It's at a critical point where I am going to have to make some decisions, and I have an easier time just working and talking than I have trying to describe what I'm doing. It takes extra cycles for me to work and describe at the same time compared to just working. So this is the point where I need to relax my brain a little bit and think in images rather than think in words. It'd be wonderful for you guys to line up and come and chit chat with me while I give this a shot. Try to make this painting come together. Perez, welcome.
What's up? How you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Yeah, I just didn't understand what you're doing. I mean, what's the purpose of you just painting this photo?
Yeah, it's practice.
Practice for what? Like, I just entered the site. It's Midjourney. It's all about AI.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing a painting demo.
Okay. Wait, everyone can hear me now?
Yes.
What's up? That's it. You can now mute me again. Have a good day.
Yes, this is a painting demo.
Hi, Peter.
Hi there. How's it going? Lion 58.
Good. It's Lee in 58.
Lee in 58. Yes.
Yes, and thank you for taking the time to do these demos. I had a couple of questions, and they kind of range from like mechanics through like just more overall flow. So you mentioned you've been doing this for 83 days. Was there like a total number of days you were going to do this exercise for to train the particular skill?
No, like the way it started was I was doing these demos and I was like switching around the format every week and trying out like different ways of like demonstrating like working in Photoshop. And then one day I was like, well, I'll do a photo study. That'll be easy. And I came up on stage and I tried to do the photo study and I did a terrible job. I was like struggling so bad. I was like, damn, I really stink at painting faces. I don't know if you know my work very well, but I tend to not paint faces in my work. And I felt like I was just getting worse at my understanding of anatomy. I was worse at rendering. I was just worse at my fundamental skills. And I had never really done a lot of photo studies. And I thought, this is something that like helps a lot of people get better kind of holistically.
Yeah.
And if I really stink at it, maybe it's worthwhile for me to just get better. And so there isn't like a point where I'm going to say I've made it.
Mm.
One of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be swapping around like the tools that I use in the near future. I'm planning on doing on like my Twitch stream. I'm planning on doing some work in pencil, and then I'm going to be taking a class in painting in gouache, and I'm going to be doing some of that live as well. So I don't know. I plan on doing some kind of study on an ongoing basis, basically forever.
Wow.
Currently, I'm up to like doing 80 of these as just sort of dailies, but I've met people over the course of this that are on like day 1500.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You said painting in gouache. What is gouache?
Gouache it's a type of paint. It's like it behaves a little bit like watercolor, a little bit like acrylic.
Mm.
It's have you ever seen the Studio Ghibli films, the like Hayao Miyazaki movies?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like all those backgrounds, those hand painted backgrounds that are in those movies, those are all done in gouache.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
So if you like those kinds of paintings that have like that kind of like cozy handmade feel, that's like a little painterly, but it's like it's not too like loose and watercolory. It's a little tighter, but it's like still a little cartoony. Like those are gouache paintings. They can be done very realistically, but they don't like mix on the canvas and blend the way oil does. So you don't get this kind of like heavily mixed look. Tends to be a little bit blockier. It's really good for landscape stuff. And yeah, I've got a former student that started teaching. He's amazing at gouache, and he started teaching these classes. And I was like, oh, I want to take this class that he's running.
That's so cool that he was a former student of yours and now you're going to take one of his classes.
Yeah, I mean, like there are so many dimensions of art. Like you can be good at so many different things within the pursuit of art that like you could, you can learn from one person and then they can learn from you very, very easily.
Mm-hmm. Then I was wondering, so you did this very quickly in the span of basically an hour. And I feel like there was a couple of stages you went through. It really helps me to think if you could summarize those stages. Like, I feel like first you started doing those, charcoal shapes, and then there was some shading. I don't know if I missed something in the middle, but if you could sort of high level summarize the different stages of doing a photo study, that's
Sure.
cool.
Well, I don't want to make any kind of illusions about that. This is how one does a photo study. This is just how I've been doing them. My process has evolved the longer I've done them. But I actually made sure to have all the stages as separate layers so I could actually do this kind of demo very easily. So let's go through them.
Oh, wow.
So every time I went to a different stage, I made a separate layer. The way I work is that I'm always working on the top layer, so I don't need to like figure out where all the stuff is. But it allows me to kind of go back through and creates kind of archaeology for the painting overall.
Yeah.
First things first, I tend to try to lay out the structure in very large, loose lines. And, I'm never that good at making sure all of the proportions are correct, but I try to make sure it's like a general framework. And I'm doing it in large, loose lines because the more kind of blurry and mushy and loose it is, the more I'm going to be able to massage those things into place as they get more and more precise. Then I'm trying to start to lay down a base of like simple value blocks. So large transitions of value across the entire head and neck, and like larger arrangements of shadow and highlight on the face, trying to get those done in a really, really loose way.
Yeah, what do you mean by value when you say?
Oh, value is a matter of the lights and darks. So value is like how white, how much black. Values is like the lights and darks of the image.
Okay.
So value being, I mean, otherwise you have to use it as two terms, right? You have to say, well, it's the lights and darks, it's the whites and blacks. But like value represents the entire spectrum of light and dark. There's a way of looking at color that is three distinct properties, and they're actually here on the sliders. One of them is the lightness and darkness, which is the value. The other one is the saturation, which is how
Rich.
how rich the color is versus how gray it is. And then there's the hue, which is where it is on the rainbow.
Got it.
And you can define any color by a mixture of those three properties. There's actually a number of like 3 property ways of breaking down any color, but this is a really easy one to understand. And so talking about the hue, the saturation, and the value as like kind of discrete visual pieces is an easy way to kind of work through the different pieces of an image individually without like, in a way we share like a common language for it.
Yeah.
So the image is too complex for me to understand the entire thing all at once. And so I find it's actually one of the ways that I try to simplify it is by treating like the hue and saturation as like separate steps. So I work only on the value first. Me adding in this color here is really just a matter of me cutting in the silhouette. So this is like, I've been working on sort of roughing out the interior of the guy. Now I'm just like roughing in the edge, like where is the silhouette of him? And then I am, this is me making slightly more refined values. So this is like, this is increasing the fidelity of those values. It's the same step again, where I'm just pushing around the values that are in there, but I'm doing it in a way that's like more precise. And so I'm getting in a little closer. I'm getting smaller marks. I'm making more precise transitions, but I'm really only focused on the lights and darks. And then now I'm introducing color, where I'm trying to glaze in color over the top of it in a way that's going to not only show the hue and saturation of the different pieces, but I'm also interested in the color temperature, like warm versus cool colors. So like within a skin tone, you can see if you look really up close that there's these areas where things are a little bit more red or maybe a little bit more yellow. They push closer to white when they start to get reflective. Inside the eye here, you can see all the redness here, but then as it's closer to the eyelid, it's actually on this highlight, it gets a little cooler. So the values of them are between these different areas they're pretty similar, but you can see like there's parts that are distinctly more warm and more cool. Yeah. And you can see I've kind of over exaggerated that by bringing in these like oranges and then these pale, more gray tones that read a little bit as blue in contrast to the reds. And so having those on the canvas gives me the ability to kind of like think about this not just as arrangements of light and dark, but also an arrangement of like warm and cool, because I have colors on my canvas now that I can sample from and push those things around. So I'm only really focused on one dimension of the work at any given time. I'm looking at this now and thinking, there's some like anatomical corrections I want to make to get the likeness a little bit closer. So there's still points where I'm going to be pushing around some of the values a bit in an effort to get like the anatomy, like the likeness to be a little stronger. Like this eyebrow here is really bothering me. But then I'm going to switch back to like focusing more just on like trying to make sure that the color temperature and all the spots are sort of the right, where I'm finding where the lights, where's it warm, where's it cool, and then maybe switching over to looking at like, well, where's it a little lighter, where's it a little darker, those sorts of little corrections. Now that I have all of the pieces arranged on the canvas, I can sort of look at all of them together and like flip back and forth between them as I make like all these much smaller kinds of analysis.
Mhm.
And so like you're going to see me just sort of like pushing things around. It's going to look like I'm just making a bunch of little corrections. But what I'm really doing is I'm thinking about I'm noticing like, oh, if I look at the values, there's something wrong with the values in this spot. Or, oh, I'm looking at the structure of it and there's something a little bit off about the structure. Or I'm noticing there's something off about the temperature of this one little spot. And as I'm like, I'm moving my perception through all these different kinds of focuses and finding all these the different ways in which it's like it needs to be close to the reference along these different axes. Because it's like you can't just look at it and go like, oh, why does it look more like that? Why doesn't it look more like the guy? Or like what should happen next? Like there's actually a lot of very subtle, discrete like framings that I'm framing those questions from.
I see.
And when I'm at this stage, I'm kind of like naturally just sort of refocusing my eyes to like be looking at more of one or more of the other as they kind of jump out at me as being incorrect or off from where I want them to be.
Yeah. This is super helpful to hear you describe the overall process. Thank you.
That's my pleasure. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, and then I have one last, like, just pretty mechanical question. I've
Sure.
not really used Photoshop where there's this split window.
Yes.
Can you show me how to do that?
Yes. There's an area up here. If you go up to the window tab at the top, there's a tab called Arrange, and you can see there's different arrangements that you can give. I've hotkeyed 2 up vertical so that I can just quickly go from like, focusing on one to like splitting it. And so I just have those hotkeyed. So I'm able to do that in a way where you're not really noticing how it's happening, but you can do it like that. The other thing you can do is you can add like a new window, and you can actually have like a floating window that's a copy of the original. It's actually the same file appearing in 2 different spots. If you see, if I draw on one, it actually appears on the other.
Oh, yeah.
So you can actually even have this on a second monitor. So I can go and swipe it off to like my second monitor and have like another version of it. This is one of the ways that people do video capture for like demos and stuff, is they'll have like their images like a separate side thing. But yeah, I like having them arranged like this side by side. You can also do it in one canvas where you set up like one big canvas and like have both images side by side. The problem then is when you zoom in to get more precise, you're going to like lose the view of the other one.
Right.
So I can sort of zoom in on these independently of each other. But what I tend to do is I tend to do this where I like, when I want to get more precise about fixing some of these things, when I get in like this, all of a sudden, like a lot of those things that are off start to become a little bit more noticeable. When I've got the larger structure in place, this really helps me like dial in on the details.
Mm. This is super helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
It's really fun to watch as well.
Glad you like it. I'm here to like help people figure this stuff out. I mean, the best way to learn it, I don't know how much you've done, but like give a try to doing this yourself. It's going to drive you absolutely nuts at first, because you're going to think it's so easy. It's like looking at the box on the side of the puzzle. Like you should be able to know where everything is because the answer's right over here, right? Like why can't I just look at this and get the right answer? The way the thing's supposed to look is right there on the left. Why am I fucking it up so much? It's like the feeling that your brain is going to give you, and it's going to be really intense. And so it can be a little intense emotionally, I think, to try to do this, because it's like, you feel you're like worried you're going to be bad. You're worried other people are going to see it. You feel like you're letting yourself down. You feel like you can't understand why you can't figure it out. Like your brain goes through all sorts of crazy like experiences over the course of doing something like this. And like part of the training is like, learning the basics of how to push stuff around in Photoshop. But the other part of it is like training yourself to like deal with the discomfort of learning.
Yeah.
And that transcends like like, you know, I mean, the guy was coming in, he's like, why are you doing this? You're just making that JPEG again. It's like, it's not the point. Like, it's not like, you know, you go to the gym and the weights need to be lifted up and down, otherwise they go bad, you
Right.
know?
I understand.
The
I
resistance.
actually try to do this myself, but I've tried using Midjourney generated images and modifying them, and I think the first one that I did, uh, I I watched one of your videos from months ago now, where I think it was like a river. Oh no, actually, it was like a kind of like an angel on a throne, and you had 4 images, and you were picking out elements of each. And so that was kind of the first thing I was able to do in Photoshop, was take existing images from Midjourney, but take elements of 2 and put them together, and then kind of hodgepodge it into something I wanted. And I was really proud of it, but it took me 10 hours.
Yeah. It's really time consuming. It's insanely time consuming to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you say, oh, you're fast, you just did this in an hour. But I've done 83 of these. That it's at least 100, and I've dumped at least 200 hours into like learning this stuff recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Um,
very inspiring.
but it's like, I have had such a great experience with that time that I like, I'm excited for the next 200 hours.
Mm. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I'm going to yield the stage for someone else in case they have
Well,
questions.
thank you for the excellent questions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Have a good one. Derpader, welcome back.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good.
I just wanted to say, you said zooming in was a really good tip. I find I've been trying to do this as well, and my progress is quite a bit slower than yours, but I'm starting from farther back. So I'm trying to stay encouraged. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm like an out of shape athlete that's like getting back. You know, don't compare it to me. It's like, yeah, I've got a lot of soft skills that are already prepped to do this.
Yeah. So I wasn't expecting to be able to like pick it up as quick as you did, but I found that zooming all the way out after you've got like large blocks in can help you rather than zooming in. I mean, you have to zoom in to get like the fine details, but like slightly before this step on the layer before, I found it really helpful to like zoom all the way out. And when the images are small, you can see the
where the broad strokes diverge. Yeah, there's like, it's weird, like the image looks so totally different when you're close and when you're far away, and they're both useful in their own respects. For some reason, there's like parts about it that should be more visible further away that I actually can see better up close, and vice versa. And I don't know why. Like, some people seem to have like a really like great grip on that. And like, I don't know, I feel like I'm just like, I see it backwards sometimes. And so I don't try to overthink it. Just like, as long as it's useful for you, like, definitely do that. This is like, that's one of the joys of painting, is that it's like, you know, there's stuff about painting that is going to naturally work for you that won't make sense to anyone else. And it's just like entirely personal.
Well,
I'm glad to hear that you're discovering some of this like firsthand, that you're realizing that like, at certain stages, if you do certain things, you start to get like a better result. Like, that's what the learning is. I mean, following too close to a demo like this is like guaranteed to yield bad results. Like, my process is crazy. It doesn't make any sense to other professional artists. Like, the way, like, even the fact that I work black and white first, I've talked to many professional artists that are like eternally perplexed by people that work the way I do. By doing the black and white first, they cannot figure out how to add color to stuff. It just doesn't ever compute.
I feel like it's easier to go black and white first and then add color, because you can put like one wash of color over something, and then all of the subtones that you want will like pop out because you have the lighting right already.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense to me. But I mean, I've talked to plenty of people that they've done this for thousands of hours, and they're like, nope, that doesn't work. They're like, I've tried plenty of times, it doesn't work. I guarantee you, it's like it doesn't like I don't get the colors. And then they'll try to do a demo. They'll be like, look, see, like it doesn't work. I do it this way. It goes great. I don't know what you're on about. Like it's I kind of love the way that it's just like it's this maddening thing where depending on what brain you have, it seems to yield like different results seem to emerge from the same set of tools.
Thanks again. I'll step off and let someone else talk.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for visiting again. It's good to hear from you.
You too.
Dorius, welcome.
Dorius. How are you, Peter? This is my first ever class on Midjourney. I've been using Midjourney for 8 months. I'm talking to you from Thailand.
Oh, well,
So it's 3:20 in the morning.
wow. Staying up late.
Yes. I have some family members sleeping, so I cannot be so loud. I just want to ask you a few questions. I've been using Photoshop for many years now. I have never painted on Photoshop because I think drawing with the mouse pad is just insane. So I'm actually...
Oh yeah, I'm not using a mouse. I'm using a pen tablet.
A pen tablet. Well, so that's my first question. What, for a beginner, what would be a good pen tablet to use?
If you go to huckleberry.art, I've got digital art resources where you can see some different pen tablets that are available. I've been doing weekly giveaways on my Twitch stream on Fridays where I give away XP pens. Both of these tablets, they're really good. The XP pen and the Huion, they're cheap. I guess this link is linking to something that's not in stock anymore. But the Huion also really good. They're like $40, $50. Oh, this one's on sale right now. 10 inches by 6 inches is usually what I like. This is a great medium size. It fits on the desk well. It travels well, but it's also like, this is a professional size. This is what I used to do all my mainline work, is something like this. I use the Canberra.
Because we just had the Comic Con in Thailand a few days ago, and I saw the tablets there and I said, where should I start? I don't even know how they work.
Oh yeah, they're really easy and intuitive to use. Don't get the one with the screen on it. It's more uncomfortable to use and it's way more expensive. You know, if you end up deciding that you don't really like working that way, it's a very expensive mistake to make. So I would recommend going with a pen tablet first. It's what I use for all of my work. It's what I'm using right now. And it's once you have it set up, you just use it intuitively. Like, with a mouse, one of the things that if you like move the mouse cursor and then you pick it up and you set it down and this is like what we do. It's all relative, right? You pick it up and it doesn't move and then you set it down and you can start moving it again. With the pen, you can see that the cursor actually teleports the specific position that I put it on.
Yes,
so
that's right. I saw some people using the pens on tablets during the Comic Con, and I thought, oh, that's much way easier to actually
so much easier. Yeah, I've known a couple of professional artists over the years that have used a mouse, but that is absolutely the hardest way to do it. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, no. I've been trying because I wanted to do this. Actually, when I discovered Midjourney, I thought, oh, this is a bless. Now I can actually text what I want to do. So that's my second question to you. What do you think about AI artists? They finding a hard time to actually get the rights to their work.
Well, I mean, what was it like? In the U.S. they ruled that AI text prompted work, AI work was public domain, which puts it on par with a lot of things, like a lot of any work that's like gone out of copyright. They just had that game Lies of P that came out, based off Pinocchio. It's also a public domain work. So it's like, it's still, you can still use it. It's just, it's not, you don't have exclusivity to the rights of it the way you do when you make something by hand.
I see. And you consider that using another application, because I use Discord on my phone to do it, using another application like Photoshop, sort of, because you're also using the tools that the application is, the software is giving you. I never really got to understand what's actually the main difference. Midjourney doesn't do anything if you don't tell it what to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. I thought that it was going to come down eventually on the side of like that if you as a person were putting in a prompt that it would count as your copyrighted work, but that's not the way it is right now.
I hope it changes in the future, really, because we all have, so like you said, it's how much to do on how your brain actually works. It's from chain master.
Well, the process of making something by hand really is different than prompting. Because it's not just one of the things about making something by hand is that it's not a matter of like dictating to the tablet what you want. You don't get to tell it like, I want a guy that looks a certain way. Like there's a lot about it that is like unspoken, that is sort of happening kind of on its own in a mysterious way. And when you're making something by hand, you are you're not just telling it what it should be. There's a lot of like back and forth with the medium. And I find that process to be very, very different from text prompting in terms of like the experience of making stuff. So I don't know if that should reflect in the way that the copyrights work, but like I can tell you from somebody who's done both extensively that they are different processes. It's more different than working in different mediums.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your point of view on that, because I never talked to a professional artist about it, and it's helping bugging me quite a lot lately. Then the last question is to do with your work. I saw your name today and I said, who's this man? So I went to Google and I couldn't believe I've actually been downloading your pictures for years.
They get around.
The creator of the angels. This is the creator of the angels. I said to my parents, the creator of the angels I downloaded. Look all this, and it's gonna be there to have a master class. I waited for an hour to see how this picture turned out, but I was so looking forward to see you create one of your creatures, really, one of your characters, because this is what I think. Yeah. So,
I'm thinking I should stream more of that in the future. I know that I've been doing Twitch streams 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Oh my God.
And I've been doing studies on those as well. And I think that a lot of people who are showing up are like, they're surprised to see me studying, because they're like, oh, they know me from this one thing and I'm not doing that thing. It's very hard for me to do that in public on the stream. I have a much easier time doing it when I'm in more private headspace. So I haven't done a lot.
Personal question.
Sure.
Where do you get the inspiration from? Is like nature, you see something, is it tree, is it landscape, is it object?
I mean, it's everything. Trying to draw on my I'm trying to draw on like my life experience, just like my intuition, memories, my sense of like how I think things are, the way that they feel to me. It's not all, it's not a process of dictation. It's a lot of intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's things that I like, and I try to reference some of the things that I like in the designs, and then I'm also trying to create some original ideas that are based off of my own personal experience. and I don't.
Well-
It's a mixture of things, and I don't really like know where all of it comes from exactly.
Yeah,
It's all a little mysterious.
and it happens in a private time for you. That's
Yeah,
very personal. So now your picture means much more to me than before.
Oh, good.
This is something very 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 personal to you. So I will let someone else to check the rain now. Thank you very much for answering all the questions. I'm so happy to have a talk to you, and continue doing what you're doing. It's great. I'm learning a lot, and I hope to see you again and talk to you again.
Yeah. Well, I'm here every Tuesday, so anytime you want to step till 3 a.m., I'll be around.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Have a good one.
Hey,
Amy, hello.
hello from Sweden.
Hello from Florida.
So, before I start off for my questions, I just wanted to say I love your work. You have been such a big inspiration to me for a month now, and I'm so grateful. Just want to thank you. Forget it.
Huh? But I think we actually talked over each other. Sorry about that. Hey, Kinky, how's it going? You are muted.
I get it. I was having trouble reaching the microphone.
Oh,
How
okay.
are you?
Doing good. How about you?
Excellent. It's been a couple weeks since we got to have our little time together, and I was wondering if you're gonna do any spooky stuff.
Spooky stuff. Well, I am planning on doing Drawtober this year. My friend Tim does this hashtag project every year called Drawtober, and there's prompts for every week. And
Yep.
the first prompt is due in 2 days. I haven't started yet. So I'm going to have to do, and they're all spooky prompts. So
Oh,
I'm going to have to
okay.
draw an overgrown cemetery, and I need to do it pronto. I'm going to start on it tomorrow morning.
Is that what is that, DeviantArt?
No, it's like they're doing it with a hashtag, so it's like on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay.
You just, to participate, you just like you make something based off the prompt, and then you use the hashtag that's in the instructions, and then they've got a Discord, and they're gonna be looking at all of them, and they're giving away prizes to people for participating, and like it gives people an opportunity to like kind of do something all together as like community. And so the Huckleberry community is I've been, I made the weekly challenges, put a hold on the weekly challenges to focus on Drawtober prompts for the next 30 days while we're doing Drawtober.
Nice. Awesome. I definitely am going to stop and complete tonight about that, because I've been wanting to do some spooky art, and I've always wanted to do a Drawtober, like, but on paper. And now that I'm messing around with Photoshop, that'd be even funner, more fun.
Oh yeah, you can do it in any medium. I just I'm looking at it as an excuse to get back to pencil drawing a little bit, because that's the other thing I've been kind of ignoring outside of like studies. Is also just I feel like my sketchbook is dusty and full of spooky cobwebs.
Absolutely. I've been feeling like that for years. Like, I pick up my sketchbook like once, like for like 1 month every year, and then
You blow that thick layer of dust off the top of it like it's an ancient
Yep.
tome.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have like 70 of them actually. They only get used once.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Not once. I mean, like, I use a couple pages. I do the whole spend a month hyperfixating on it, and then I put it down and lose it and forget where it is. But that's going to be one of the things I think that's going to make me more capable of doing more art is having it in the machine that I have my face stuffed into, 18 to 24 hours a day.
There's that. But I mean, I think the community side of things really helps also. Like, I've gotten a lot of people on to start study train by doing it along with the community, and then like Drawtober, it's all about like everyone kind of sharing their art together, and like you got this like social pressure building up of like, hey, these other people are all getting off their asses and doing it. Maybe I should be doing it too.
Yep. I completely understand. And I think I might join you guys on that.
Cool.
I had another question and I forget what it was. Oh, head stuck in spooky time. I'm sure I'll remember it next time. And I wanted to say hi, and that I love the quality of this guy's face. Who's this?
I got no idea. I found him on Pinterest this morning.
And that reminds me of, like, he doesn't look anything like, but it has like a very Rami Malek quality.
I was thinking my version started to look a little bit more like Hayden Christensen than the original one.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, I'm definitely not getting the lightness right, or maybe one of the Skarsgårds. Maybe a little bit Alexander Skarsgård.
Yep. I was thinking of the guy that I don't think he looks like him, but I'm talking about just the complexities of like figuring out what necessarily makes him attractive, and why he is so attractive. He's very attractive.
He's very chiseled. He's chiseled all over.
Yeah.
He's chiseled for days. I'm exaggerating it too, because I'm sort of overdoing the halftones on him a little bit, and it's like I'm actually thinking I might do a little bit of an adjustment to try to like maybe push that back a little bit.
Huh.
We'll see.
Looks great. I think
Thank you.
all right, great job. But I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm a little sick right now, so my brain isn't completely together, but I did want to say hi. And you've got somebody else in line, so I'm going to take off. But I hope you have a wonderful one. Bye.
You too. Feel better, please.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How was your day?
Doing good.
Thank you. I really like this picture. I just wanted to come on to tell you that the picture actually looks really great.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
All right. Well, thanks for the compliment. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. I'm chiseling out all those features, I think, a little bit in an exaggerated way, pushing the highlights a little further up, pushing the shadows a little further back, just the way that like everything is folding a little deeper. And I'm trying to average it out just a little bit, because not only am I pushing like the values, but I'm also pushing the the temperature differences as well. And the two, I think, are adding up. And it's like maybe overdoing it a little bit compared to what I was aiming for. So averaging out some of these features a little bit as I like move into some of the less finished parts of the painting. Add some definition to the hair. Maybe I can definitely add some, I've definitely got time to add some subtlety and shape to the hair. And then I'm also going to like get into the neck and the jacket just a little bit. It's just that this picture is so much about the face. Do not have any regrets about maybe spending a little longer on the face, getting all that stuff ironed out. Yeah, a little soft brushing around wherever I've got these tighter folds. Give it a little bit of a softer focus overall, I think is going to give it a better impression and maybe be a little bit more accurate to the thing as well. It's like whenever I'm in close like that, I'm just looking at the tightest possible edges and I'm expressing them in the tightest possible way. But then when I zoom out, I realize that there's these much larger, softer things happening. And that's also part of the image. Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now, and I'm feeling much, much better about it almost immediately as it's starting to come together. pushing a little bit of lights into the darks, a little darks into the lights. And then we can start bringing in maybe a little bit of these yellows to reflect into the hair as I start to establish a little bit more structure for the hair. Now that we have so many of the pieces in place, these things that were at first calling out to be worked on, I've spent the last 90 minutes ignoring them. Now their time is finally coming due. And because I've done all the preparatory work around it, I have all the colors in place, I have them exactly where I need them, it's only going to take a few little strokes here and there to be able to put them into a place where they're going to feel right. I like doing the hair like this, where it's like, instead of getting in and focusing on the individual grains, just looking at the bigger, broader shapes of it and putting them in a nice, soft way. It's the same brush, but I'm doing a lot more small, lower opacity strokes. Got my opacity turned down a bit, and I'm just making a lot of strokes kind of running against the grain of them, so that my brush uses the softer edge. If I run parallel strokes, they make nice hard lines. But if I run axially, they make softer lines using the same brush. You can also find that brush on huckleberry.art, where I've got the community link as well. I have my main brushes are all there for free. They're compatible with Photoshop and CSP and Krita. So yeah, softening up all the edges of this on the hair is making it look a lot better, I think. Starting to really come together. Well, hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
How you doing?
Hi. Well.
Thanks for. Okay, very good. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
How many years have you been painting?
I've been making art for about 23 years.
3 years? Wow, that's a lot. I mean, your arts are amazing.
But I figured I would be better after 23 years.
Yeah, but this is my first time I joined your stage, and I never seen this much of beauty. Just one painting.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too. Yeah, I've been at it for a bit. I started drawing when I was 16. And that was in the year 2000. So whenever anybody asks me how long I've been drawing, it's easy math every time. This guy has definitely got a lot of intensity going on. I'm seeing just like the intense lines on the outside of his face here. And just like the way he's looking at a slightly downward angle, it's like almost accusatory, very intense. It's like the Hey Blue, how's it going?
What's up, man? What is this server? I'm gonna be honest, I just joined like 2 minutes ago.
Oh yeah, I'm doing a painting demo.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Why do all these people inside the chat look like bots? Like none of them have PFPs.
Yeah, apparently there was what I've been told is like typically it's about 150, 250 people in here. But because there's like some glitch that's causing all the new users to join into the stage. Like there's just been hundreds or thousands of people just hanging on the stage for like no reason, even when there's no events going on. So I walked in, there was like 400 people in here. I was like, damn, what the hell?
It might be because they made guest accounts now. I don't know. Jesus.
I mean, test accounts come on and off, but like this is the first week. I've been doing this for a long time, and this is the first week where that's been a thing. So I don't know what the hell's going on. Discord's always changing the rules. Yeah.
Love your drawings, man. Keep it up.
Thank you.
So, how often do you draw?
I draw just about every day.
Or do you do it as like work or?
Yep. Yeah. I'm an independent artist. I've been for like the last
job, or do you have another?
Oh yeah. For the last 10 years, my main job has been working for myself. I just make my own art and I sell it straight to my fans. That's been my main job, my main income for like the last decade. I used to work in games before that.
Oh yeah, keep it up, man. Where you from?
I'm coming to you from Florida.
Florida? Oh no, I think I gotta leave the stage after that.
Yeah, hello?
Oh, I bet I disconnected or something. 400. Oh, we're at 420. Check that out. That's kind of nice. Well, I'm up off the stage.
All right, so next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep working on these details. I'm happy with how these like finishing touches are coming together. Just adding additional layers of subtlety, smaller marks, a little extra flyaway hairs, and like extra little bits of subtlety, pushing around the features, getting closer to like the way that the original reference looks. I don't think I've done an amazing job on reconstructing his haircut. He's got quite the do. All right, let's take a look at his shirt a little bit before I wrap this up. I've got 18 minutes left on the timer. Oh wait, I forgot his ear. These little complex organic shapes are often my favorite things to paint, partially because they can be a little bit more freeform. You don't need to get as precise about something like an ear or a cloud or, anything that's got like a twisty organic shape to it. Just so long as you get nice, smooth transitions between all of the stuff, you're able to make things look very natural and good. And it feels good to do. I might have the position on the ear a little wrong though. Not sure if I need to thicken this part that's next to his sideburn or if I need to reposition the ear a little bit. I might push that ear back. Might be one of the things that's changing the head shape. Reposition this ear a little bit. Since I'm always on the top layer, it's pretty easy to make these kinds of adjustments. Here we go. And then inside the ear is a little oily for most people. So you get this like shiny sheen that shows off like all the curvature of all these folds here. We have most of the colors, most of the values exactly where we need them. Just a matter of nudging them left and right. Just a little bit here and there. That's all it takes to be able to put them into place. Just a little push there, a little push here. Figure out where the path of least resistance is and just Give it a little tap. I think that's the thing I've learned a lot over the last 20 years is just building an intuition on where it needs to be nudged a little bit to the left or to the right. Done it thousands and thousands of times, tens of thousands of times in this micro scale, trying to figure out, does this need to be a little bit softer, a little harder, a little bit left, a little bit right, up or down? Where does this need to be a tiny bit different? And how can I make a brush stroke that's going to change it that way, just a little bit? And that's what getting faster at painting really looks like. It's not about making marks more quickly. It's about understanding where the path of least resistance is. It's sort of like natural, cosmic path of least resistance. Getting a sense of that is like a huge part of what it means to grow as a painter. And you see that in artists that are like master artists who are in their elder years or at their peak ability. Just a couple simple marks and they can express incredibly complex things. It's one of those things that you maybe not even appreciate unless you understand what you're looking at. The older I get, the more when I go to an art museum, I look at some of the work that I used to see as kind of rough and unfinished, and now I just marveling at like the incredible subtlety of what's possible at the very highest levels of ability. And I know that I'm miles and miles away from it after 20 years of practice. It's very exciting to know that there's so much left ahead of me if I want to explore that way. But there's like 20 different ways I could explore. More than a lifetime's worth of work potentially ahead of me. Never really did the nose here before. There we go. Didn't need a lot, just needed a little bit. Yeah, the more I do this, the more I'm starting to see where I can give a more subtle touch to change things. It was this desire to want to like carve in hard edges and like try to be forceful about it that I've slowly gotten better at as I've done more of these. It's understanding about where I can put in a soft mark instead of a hard one. Make a little change instead of a big one. And have that ultimately be what I'm looking for. All right. I like this guy. Let's give him a shirt. He's got this, it's a very, very dark shirt. I'm going to give it maybe a little bit of saturation, maybe a little bit of trying to figure out whether I want to twist this a little bit more cyan or a little bit more purple. Very dark, a little bit of saturation. Let's put it on a new layer so we can experiment a little here. Ooh, that's a lot of saturation. We go dark, dark, dark with it. And it's got this rough edge, so it gives me an excuse to leave like a rough brush stroke for an edge instead of getting too precise about it. I can even stylize that a lot. He's got a shirt underneath, so it looks like the line on the neck is like a dark gray shirt. It's hard to tell unless you're really close. I can treat it just a little differently and try to see if I can get them to transition into each other in a way that like looks nice. They don't run parallel. Collar kind of comes out over here. One of the other things I like to do is I like to intentionally smear some of the spots of paint. The areas where it's going to be like either calling too much contrast to itself or areas that are naturally kind of already kind of soft, giving them a little extra boost of softness gives a little free style points. We call it a lost edge.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, how's it going?
Just reading the BC text, and one gentleman's asked a question. His name's Shamel. He said, how do I get gradient maps that aren't shaped like radial or lines? I want to do the value option, or whichever one it is that you do.
Yes. This is an easy question to answer. Very happy to answer it. Yeah, that's a great, what you're describing is the gradient tool. Let me demonstrate. A new layer here. There's the gradient tool. And there's a radial gradient. You know, here's a linear gradient like that, right? That's the gradient tool. And you can blend that over the top of the image just as well as a gradient map. It is a way that you could create a color palette. Absolutely. Is to say like, let's invert this. If you wanted to like, create a color palette that was like focusing certain colors on a specific zone inside the painting, you can certainly just lay it over like that. But we want to do something a little bit more complex. And so what a gradient map is, it's an adjustment layer, which is down here at the bottom of the layers tab. And adjustment layers, they work differently. You can see it's an entire layer itself. And there's a bunch of different types. Like this one is a level adjustment. And it works just like when you do level adjustment, you know, out of the menu here, except for you can turn it on and off. You can change it after the fact. You can reorder it inside your canvas so it only affects everything below it. There's all kinds of weird things you can do with an adjustment layer that you can't do with a layer adjustment. That sounds a little odd that those two things are different, but they are. Gradient map is one of these adjustment layers. And in here, it's going to put the gradient, it's going to map the gradient to the values rather than simply put it in a shape. And that's what they're asking about.
Look.
You do crazy, crazy stuff with it. You know, one of these things that popped up as I was doing this was it was showing just like blocks of yellow, the bits over the top, while everything else underneath it was sort of turning gray. I'm going to see if I can reproduce that a little bit. That was a cool moment. Whoops. Yeah. So maybe I'll just grab a little gray here.
No.
Yep. And just leave some of the swatches of yellow over the top. Or actually, if I do it under here, do it underneath this layer and actually use some of the marks that are already there, kind of mask it out. If I wanted to. Ooh, that's kind of cool.
Oh, it's just, I like the way the question's just evolved into you going, oh, that's funny how life works out.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's like, these flat backgrounds are nice. This is having a little bit of a shape to it. Like this is very appealing. So I'm gonna deepen this a little bit, and that's going to be one of the final touches for this for the study today.
He says, "Thank you very much for answering the question."
Yes. Well, it's a good question. Any kind of any kind of like a question like that, that's it's easy. It's so easy to answer. It's got a real straightforward technical question, not like one of these grand questions of the universe, artistic questions that also loom in the air. So many difficult things about learning to paint and be an artist and express yourself, and the law and the all the crazy things going on with AI. Figuring out where the gradient map tool is in Photoshop is so much nicer of a question, so much more eminently answerable.
Well, so I popped on to help get that question out. I'll answer it a bit.
Well, yeah, thanks for assisting. I'm not able to see the VC text well.
I get that. I get that. Oh, all right. See, it's better. Yes.
All right. Dang, I wish I had recorded this one on a separate window. Ah, well, I'll do that next time. I need to start doing that where I have it on a separate window that's being recorded separately. The likeness came out all right in the end. I was really worried there at the beginning. I'm always a little sketchy when it comes to that stuff. And then I do these like loose brush strokes at the end, trying to see if I can like kind of nudge it all in place. And I worry that some of them leave a little bit too much texture once I zoom in. So I'm going to make sure not to like learn from my past regrets a little bit and see if I can blend in here a little before I bail on you guys. Bring the cheekbone up a little bit here. That highlight move all the way past have this main plane of highlight move past this like bit of specular and all the way into the sideburn here. There we go. And then some of that specular also even hits the hairline on this side. If I wanted to get, I think just a little bit more volume here on the hair, some really simple, clean specular marks, try to define where the center of that highlight is. I said that I was going to just do a couple of background touches and that was going to be the end of it. But man, I could probably spend another hour on this if I really wanted to get into it. Now I'm going to rush to my final details to make time here so I don't hold Ancient Chaos up from his very hot date that he's got coming up tonight. I don't know if you know this, but every single time we do this at 5 o'clock, Ancient Chaos always has a hot date that he's got to run to. That's why I've got to leave at 5. This is a little bit of a specular right there. Gives it a bit more, few tighter marks. Give it the definition it's calling out for. Doesn't take much. Don't need to draw all the hairs. And then this over here, I want to have soft, but I don't want it to have that overly crunchy look. He's got a few parallel ones that are kind of cool looking. Be nice to see them fade over the length. There we go. A little bit of variety. The density between those different hair chunks gives it a little bit more oomph. Bring out his already very prominent chin, just a hair. And then I'm just going to darken up the shirt a little bit in a way that feels a little bit more like an abstract pattern. Because we can't really read it either way, so we don't really need to get too specific down in it. I just don't want anything to feel accidental. Perfectly fine letting them feel rough, but not accidentally rough. Key ingredient in great art is intention. Intention is always, always the thing that needs to be preserved. If you can demonstrate intention, people will always notice the work. Here we go. Okay, we got him. We got him, guys. That's it. Just at 5 o'clock, one perfect study. This was one of my best ones ever. Thank you for hanging out with me while this was going on. Number 83 is in the bag. Thanks, Ancient Chaos, for administrating this. You're welcome to go on your hot date now. Thanks, everyone, for showing up, and thanks, everyone who accidentally wandered in here because of the glitch with Discord. It's great having you. I'm going to come back every single Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can see the event up in the top of the server here. And, you know, I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good one. Oh, and thanks, everyone who came up on stage. A lot of really good questions this week. Really appreciate it, you guys. I'll see you around.